When he went to the Akins and asked him for money, he knew the first money he was getting was not going to help finish that movie off. He knew that was just enough to get started and do the battle scenes.
Yeah, I think so. And then he went on with it. And
because what did Judith of Bethulia cost?
Well, most books say 36,000. I think 13 would be more like it. And a lot of that was wasted money too. It makes no sense that that would cost 36,000 because it wasn't that long a film. There weren't that many people in it. And why would it cost 1/3 of The Birth of a Nation with big scenes in it and hundreds of extras and horses and giant sets? All he had to do was build a couple of walls and out at Chatsworth and use natural rock formation and some sand. Now, I think 13,000 makes a lot more sense. I think a lot of that's baloney. But, you know, people believe what they want to believe.
Why didn't Biograph release it?
Well, Biograph was making, was basically 1 or 2 reel films, and their whole commercial program was to supply 1 or 2 reelers to theaters. Monday, Wednesday, and whatever it is, 2 or 3 times they change a week change program. They released it, and along with Battle of Elderbush Gulch in Europe before they released it in America. They didn't release it till 1914 because they had to think of a new way of getting it out. They could not put it out through their own arrangements. It had to play differently than in the Nickelodeon. And they were opposed to that. And they were opposed to Griffith making big film. But they didn't know what they were doing. They were vindictive. And I think they were very ticked at Griffith for disregarding what they wanted in making the film. And so when they came back, in a sense, they punished him and said, no, we're going to also make some 4 or 5 reelers, but you are back to making 1 reelers. And that was it. That was it.
He takes an ad out?
Yep. October or November, listing all the films that he made. Then he tried to talk Bitzer into leaving that company. He said, I don't trust these new guys. They don't have any money. I'm going to lose my job. Talks Bitzer into it. And starts out.
I mean, the Akins were incredible guys. I mean, they started distributing in 1905. They're buying up artists to try to become mega producers that they don't become.
The next year.
Yeah.
1915. When Birth was a big success, then they started to buy the stage people.
But
by the way, the Akins is almost a mistake. It's almost best to say Harry Aitken. The brother was not very important in it, frankly. He becomes important because Harry died and Roy lived. But he was second fiddle.
But they own Majestic. They own pieces of, what was it, Triangle?
Reliance. Reliance and Majestic. Releasing through Mutual. And then in the summer of 1915, they formed Triangle. So they break, Mutual kicks him out, and then they form Triangle. And Harry's idea was that, well, we're going to release a whole bunch of films $2 a piece, at $2 tariff at the box office, like Birth. But they didn't have a $2 top movie. So that didn't last long. And then they made Macbeth at a tremendous expense with a Shakespearean actor who said, I'd act even better if you took away that black box. And he tried to recite all of Shakespeare's lines, which sounds great, but terrible. And one of the press thing referred to as his stomach ache faces. So they couldn't give Macbeth away.
Did Louis B. Mayer screw them out of money? And how were they distributing The Birth where people were buying up?
I think what Louis B. Mayer did was buy the states' rights for The Birth of a Nation in New England. Because they didn't know how well it was going to do, and he gave them whatever, let's say $50,000 for the rights, and then made $1 million, $2 million on it. But they wanted some money back.
Was that a new way of distributing movies?
Yeah. It's hard to say how they did not really have a distribution network It was just coming in then. They didn't. Well, he roadshowed it, with his own orchestra, sound effects, projectors, everything else. That would be shown in various theaters, and that would be not shown in a movie theater. That would be shown in a special, legitimate theater, like an opera house, that they would rent for a week or whatever it might be. Big overhead doing that, but a lot of people showed up. All the money's yours if you make it, all of it. But that's the only time this roadshow ever did well. It did okay in way down east too, but otherwise roadshows were disasters.
The music for The Birth, 220 some odd music cues. That was revolutionary for its time.
That number might be, but Cabiria certainly had an orchestral score with a chorus and everything. That was arranged. That was beforehand. Birth is really not that new. It's just that much better. Because anytime you think you find like a $2 top, you find another $2 top or $1.50 top. It's almost...
Well, after The Birth, there was more competition in the theaters now. You just couldn't...
Yeah. Well, don't forget, Birth showed up in a legitimate theater where it played, New York. The Liberty Theater was a legit house. It was not a movie theater. And it played in other places, as I said, in legitimate houses.
The importance of Birth is?
I think it's the first real giant and supremely successful epic film. 12 reels, almost 3 hours long in America. Very financially successful, very artistic, with all kinds of new devices in it, made film really a legitimate art form that was worthy for middle and upper class people to show up at without maybe hiding their faces. And as I said before, was liked by almost everybody, but a very small amount. Almost everybody said it was just fine, lovely, great.
So people always sum up Griffith after Intolerance as a failure. How did his life progress after that?
Well, I don't know. I think he's still white hot during Hearts of the World. I think he's extremely good during 1918 when he's making more modest features. I think he may have been ruined a little bit by Birth, in that maybe he would have done better making smaller films.
The race issue.
That epic thing is really screwed him up in a way. He went for the big bucks. I suppose it's like a roulette wheel. You're not just betting on red and black. You're betting on the individual number.
But that race issue's been with him his whole life. That's all anybody wants to remember.
The race issue has been with him more recently, in the last 30 years particularly. It was not around that much in the beginning, as I said, except for a small fringe. Most people did not mind that. Now they mind it. And I would say ignoramuses who know nothing about history or anything else are jumping on him for what? By taking the film out of the context of its period. For example, if I tell you the world is flat and you're going to fall off the edge, if I tell it to you now, that's ridiculous. If I tell it to you in 1480, it was a plausible theory. Okay? Now it sounds crazy. But it wasn't crazy then. It's in the context of its time. Do you believe in witches and that the devil is around all the time? Fine. Hundreds and hundreds of years ago, a lot of people believed it. Today, I think you're a lunatic.